Okay, right. Hello, everybody. Hopefully you can hear and see us okay. Welcome to Sheffield Adventure Film Festival's first online talk of this autumn and winter season. I'm Anna, I'm co-director of ShAFF along with Matt Heeson. Matt isn't here tonight, it's his 50th birthday. I don't think he'll mind me telling you, so he's out on the town doing his party thing while we're here doing our talk. So I'm just going to talk for a little while I'm letting people in. There's normally two of us doing this, so I'm going to be doing a little bit of pressing. Here we go, and a little bit of letting people in. So this is the first of our online talks for this autumn and winter season. Some of you might remember that we actually started these back in lockdown 2020. They're pay-as-you-feel talks. At the time, it seemed quite important to find a way to stay connected, and people were going through difficult times. And in some ways, it still feels a little bit tricky. So they're still pay-as-you-feel, but hopefully, if you enjoy the talks and if you feel that you can, please do donate and we'll send some links around to you. So today's talk is a run talk, you won't be surprised to hear, and it's hosted by Ally Beaven. Ally is a runner, he's also an author, and he's based in Scotland. He's going to be interviewing Sabrina Verjee, so I will leave Ally to introduce Sabrina to you. So Ally, are you here?
Yes.
Oh, there you are.
So had I disappeared?
Yeah, you've gone.
I'm going to mute myself and hand over to you, Ally. Have a good talk.
Excellent, thank you. Hello, everybody. It's been a while since we've done this. This is a group that's kind of self-selected for knowing who Sabrina Verjee is, so I probably don't need to do an extensive bio. Sabrina's been winning ultras since 2014, as far as I can tell. She's won quite a lot of them. Lakeland 50, Lakeland 100s. Written things down. Grand Tour of Skiddaw 4 times.
Yeah, I think 3, maybe 4.
The Spine in summer, the Spine in winter. And a lot of that stuff is covered in the book that she's written, Where There's a Hill, 1 Woman, 214 Lake District Fells, 4 attempts, 1 record-breaking Wainwrights Run. As the name suggests, most of the book, Sabrina, you focus on the 4 attempts on the Wainwrights record. But before that, there's a sort of whistle-stop autobiography, right? Taking through your childhood, time at school, a few different schools, a few different universities, a few different career paths, a few different sports, to bring us up to Sabrina Verjee living and working in the Lake District and running long distances in the Fells. Was that section of the book easy to write? Did you know what the right things to include were?
Yeah, I guess I was asked by Kirsty Reid, who runs herself. She works at Vertebrate Publishers, and she asked me to write about the Wainwrights, you know, the run I did. And I was like, well, do I just write about that? I need to give it some context. And people have often asked me, you know, why did I start running, or how did I start running, and when did I start running? So I thought, okay, well, let's start at the beginning then, you know, and I just tried to think back to when did I start running? And it's quite a hard thing to answer. So I thought I would just start right at the beginning of childhood, and yeah, and make it a little bit of an autobiography, so that people could get a background into the sort of person that I am, because I think that's what people want to know. How did someone like me, because I'm certainly not a professional athlete and didn't start out life that way, end up, you know, running something like the Wainwrights? So yeah, it's got a little bit of everything from my random path to running. You can see, like you mentioned, different career paths, but different sports, or no sports in the beginning.
You were a modern pentathlete for a while, which is, I'll try and get this right, pistol shooting,
yep,
horse riding, fencing, running, and something else. Swimming. Yeah, that makes sense. And you moved from there into adventure racing. When did you kind of get the idea that going longer was better for you?
Yeah, when I was doing the pentathlon itself, the competitions were quite long, I guess, because it was the whole weekend. We'd do all 5 sports together. So that was a little bit of endurance in a way. And then I started cross-country running as well, off the back of doing 3K cross-country in the modern pentathlon. I did a 6K cross-country course. And I think I ended up doing exactly the same time for 6K as twice as long as my 3K. So it's like I didn't get any slower. And then I even did a 6K cross-country run, got driven to the sports centre, or drove myself to the sports centre, and then competed in the 3K cross-country for a modern pentathlon, got my best ever time. So it was like the more I ran, sort of the better I was getting to. I needed a good warm-up, shall we say. So that was probably my first inkling into, yeah, sprinting's definitely not my thing, but longer distance running might be. But like you mentioned, I found the adventure racing while I was doing the pentathlon, and I was attracted to that just because it just seemed like this crazy cool sport to do, where yeah, you'd be in a team and you did all these different sports. So I started riding bikes and kayaking as well, because most adventure races are based around running or trekking and kayaking and mountain biking or cross-country cycling. So I joined this team called Cam Racers, who were based in Cambridge, and we did quite a few races, some really long ones, 4 or 5 days. Most of them were non-stop. So I just slipped straight into that and found that at the beginning of the race, I found it really hard. The first few hours particularly, I was really blowing, trying to keep up with everybody. It was really quite unpleasant, that first bit. But as I got into the race, I would find I was getting stronger and stronger. But for the last sort of couple of days of the race, I'd probably be the strongest person in the team, certainly the most focused and able to keep going and motivate everybody. So I think it was really from the adventure racing that I was like, yeah, I can do this endurance stuff.
I just, as a slight aside, I think we forgot to mention, if anyone has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and we can address them as they come up, or we can get to them at the end. I believe we have a copy of Sabrina's book that Vertebrate, the publishers, have given us to give to one of you. So maybe we will judge that based on who asks the best question. So no pressure, but your questions have to be witty and insightful. How did you find the adventure racing thing in terms of being a team sport?
Yeah, so I guess being new to it, it was good to have people to learn from in my team and look out for each other. I certainly didn't know what I was doing in the beginning. There are all sorts of dynamics in a team, you know, different people. I started racing with Cam Racers. I raced with them for quite a while, and they had very clear roles of what the team members would do. So we had 2 strong navigators, Jeff Pal-Davies and Russ Ladkin. So they would be reading the maps and taking care of where we were going. But Russ was extremely experienced. He'd been racing for a long time, and he helped me learn a lot of my rope skills. So sometimes some of these races, they suddenly throw a bit of rock climbing in or something caving, and so you have to learn how to rope yourself up and make sure you're safe. So he took me out quite a few times, so I learned quite a lot. And then, you know, during the actual race, you discover different people have different strengths. So some people were better on their feet, some people better at cycling. I was a stronger cyclist to begin with. That was more my discipline. And I was really quite terrible at the trail running. In fact, I'd never run off-road until I started adventure racing. So I had to learn, and I had the wrong shoes on. You know, I had these flat road running shoes because that's all I'd ever done. The cross country, I was running in spikes, so that was completely different and inappropriate for adventure racing. So sometimes I learned the hard way. Yeah, I actually remember getting myself a pair of mud claws for one of these races, and we ended up running a long section on road and pounding my poor little feet. That was very painful because I don't really have any cushioning. Anyway, now I have my mutants, which give me grip and are very comfortable, and they've all I've worn for the last sort of 6 or 7 years. So yeah, learning to trail run and fell run as well, because we did some of that in the adventure races. Some of them were based in the Lake District, but I went abroad as well. So it's whatever terrain you come across. So that was exciting.
I'm raced all over,
now.
right? You did God's Own in New Zealand and all sorts.
Yeah, so I raced with an Irish team in God's Own. I've raced with British teams. I've raced with a couple of French teams in France and in Chile. I've raced with a Spanish team in Australia, in the Worlds, and South Africa as well. So yeah, it's taken me all sorts of places, and I've learned a lot of skills. So I really enjoyed it.
You write in the book about some of the frustrations you had with some of the team dynamics in adventure racing. And so the setup in adventure races is it's teams of 4 and they have to be mixed teams, right? So that usually means 3 men, 1 woman. And often you felt like you were essentially there to make up the numbers, when really you had more to contribute than you were being allowed to contribute.
Yeah, that's true. So when I started it, I was a novice. So, I accepted this lowly role of being this woman they needed to take round. But I learned a lot off my teammates, and I got stronger and stronger. And eventually, that's when I reached out to find other teams to race with. Some teams who had a chance at, getting on the podium. And they also needed a female to join their 3-man team. And I think a lot of the time, the attitude was that, I was a woman and therefore I couldn't read a map, or, I couldn't do this, and I didn't have a lot to contribute other than just trying my damnedest to keep up. And, it wasn't really the case. I felt that it would have been better if I had been a valued member of the team. I had a lot to offer. By the time I'd been racing, for 7-8 years, I had a lot to offer to the team. I often knew how to map read better than the team, especially when they were very sleep deprived and not really thinking straight, but they wouldn't listen. I found myself following these 3 guys going completely the wrong way, knowing we were going the wrong way, and getting extremely frustrated and just wanting to, I wasn't motivated to keep racing when I knew we weren't doing our best. So that was frustrating. And so, yeah, that's when I thought I would try my hand at ultra running, really, because it was something I could do on my own, but put to use the same skills that I'd learnt. So the navigation, looking after myself, managing my sleep deprivation, keeping myself warm and dry, all the equipment, the head torches, the waterproofs, things, knowing how to use all these things to the best of my advantage to keep going quickly and continuously in the right direction as best I could.
What was about your first experiences racing ultras then?
Sorry?
Tell us about your first experiences racing ultras once you decided to move away from...
Yeah, so the first one I entered was the Grand Tour of Skiddaw. It's about 70 kilometres. I think I might have made it a bit longer, just for good measure, a couple of times. That one's waymarked, so you don't really go around with a map in your hand. And I think one year somebody had decided to remove some of these waypoints or turn them in the wrong direction. So that was interesting. But the first race was quite funny because I turned up as this newbie who'd come from adventure racing. I didn't know whether I was going to be particularly good at it or not. I knew I would be able to finish the race. That was never in question. But how long it would take, I didn't know. So we were allowed to have a drop bag at the halfway point. So I thought it would be sensible to pack my usual things that I would do for a transition on an adventure race. But when you're adventure racing, you might not see your box for like 24 hours. So anyway, I put loads of food in there. I put change of shoes, change of socks, I put some change of layers, I had a waterproof, I had some protein shakes. So this bag was quite big. I mean, it was probably a 50-litre hold or something, or maybe a bit bigger. Yeah. So I turn up to this race and I go and get my number and I hand in this bag, and they're absolutely taking the mick out of me because they're like, "What? This is ridiculous." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry. Is it okay?" And I said, yeah, it'd be fine. We'll just put it in the van. So good. So anyway, so I start running this race, and I got to this transition point with my drop bag in about 4 hours. So I didn't actually need anything. So I didn't even open it. It's a bag that had been logged up to, I think, was it Latbridge car park? I'm not sure. And then I just carried on. I finished this race. And so at the end, I got a spot prize for the biggest drop bag. But I did also take away the first ladies prize as well. So there you go. We all learn from our mistakes.
I was working at an aid station on the Daba Way 50k last weekend, and like the best bit of the day is judging people by their drop bag. Like it's the best part about volunteering. The best one was just a Ziploc bag with a can of espresso in it.
Yeah.
Nothing else. No food, no socks, no nothing. And it's next to someone who's brought what looks like their school bag with, new shoes and all the rest. This woman rolled in, just had 300 milligrams of caffeine and then disappeared again. It was great. And in the book, the sort of segue between becoming a runner and the Wainwrights, there's a few chapters in there about your wins at the Spine Race, one in the summer, one in the winter. The summer was in 2019, so that's now 3 and a bit years ago. You've more or less been focused on the really long, like continuous multi-day stuff since then. Has that been a deliberate choice? Have you made sort of, not calculations, but decisions about where your strengths are and the sort of thing you'd like to pursue?
Yeah, I just love it. I just love the journeys that you get to do with these long races. Dragon's Back is a classic. You get to start in one place, 5 days later you're in another place, or now 6 days. But I'm not so keen on the camping, got to be honest. I'm not into sleeping in a tent too much. I'd rather not sleep. I'd rather just keep running than try to, I've done too many OMS where, I'm sleeping on really poor or lack of mat and your tent's got water coming into it, and it's really, there's nothing fun about camping really, not while running as well. You're all sweaty and minging. It's nice to have a shower and get into a nice bed if you're gonna bother with the whole sleep thing. Otherwise I'd rather just keep going. So yeah, that's why I've chosen to do these non-stop races, and the longer the better actually. It means the longer break I get from work. It's brilliant.
I mean, you've won plenty, quote unquote, short races, right? Like the Grand Tour of Skiddaw is like 7 or 8 hours. But your results, I think there's a fairly clear trend that you're performing better in longer races, right? Like you've won the Lakeland 100 twice.
Yeah.
But even after that, I think we see your performance level goes up after that. I
always think everybody's just got bored and gone home or something.
Well, no, I don't think that's the case. I mean, this culminates with the tour, I think, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. We can put that aside for now. So what do you think specifically are the strengths that mean you do so well 2 days, 3 days, 4 days down? So
people don't like it when I say I'm not a fast runner, because I don't mean to, because actually that's it depends in the context, doesn't it? If I go to a short fell race, I'm not going to blow anybody away with my performance. I'm quite happy to finish mid-pack or even lower down than that, and I'd be happy with that. But when you race these longer races, I think it's less about running. There's, to be honest, there's nothing about me that's a natural runner, really. Cycling, yes, probably more natural cycling, but running, no. But I can just keep going at whatever it is I'm doing, whether it be cycling, kayaking, wallpaper stripping. I always mention that one. I'll just keep going, working. I'll just keep going until the job is done. It's just, I guess that's a mentality rather than a physical thing. So the longer these races are, the less it is just about the running. So you have to be able to look after yourself. So if you have really sore feet because you haven't looked after them, they've got wet, muddy, gritty, blistered, they're uncomfortable. And so if you were the best, fastest sprinter or runner in the world, and then you had feet that hurt like hell, your performance is going to be affected, isn't it? So there are things that you can do to help yourself maintain a decent running pace that isn't super fast, but is sustainable. And you do that by looking after yourself. I think I'm quite good at being independent and looking after myself. Taking care, as I say, of my feet, but also that I'm not too hot or I'm not too cold, that I'm taking enough nutrition on board, that I'm managing my sleep. So I obviously want to sleep as little as possible, but knowing when actually I do need to sleep and stop in order to get myself to the end. I generally am quite good at getting myself to go in the right direction. I mean, it's interesting to see, even the tour, it was completely waymarked, but in some places, for example, the cows had decided to eat all of the markers. So you'd turn up, you'd be following these little yellow flag posts, and then you'd suddenly find yourself slipping in cow shit and lots of cows and no flags. So you then had to get yourself to the next point, and we had a GPX on a watch on this occasion, so you could use that, but you still need to know how that works and how to use it. And then other races, it's actually pure navigating. The very first Dragon's Back I did, it was just map and compass, no GPX, and that was brilliant. So yeah, there's a few other skills involved than just the running in these longer races. So it allows me to take in the other things that I'm actually good at rather than just rely on running.
The first Dragon's Back was 2015, right?
The first one I did, yeah.
Yeah, I did it that year.
You did.
Just looking at your results, you did better than I did.
And it's not because I run faster than you, is it?
The days 3, 4, and 5, you were definitely moving a hell of a lot faster than that one. The last day of that race, I was 68th fastest in a race with 65 finishers. That's a statistic I like a lot.
Yeah, I think we were all hobbling a bit by the end in that one.
All that stuff you just mentioned kind of leads us to the Wainwrights, because it was always your tactic with that you would move slower but stop less.
Yeah.
How much thought had you given it beforehand, like how fast you could do it, how you might make time up on what Steve and Paul had done? How much of it was just wanting to do the round and just throwing a schedule together and we'll see what happens?
Yeah, it's really interesting you mention that, actually. So I first learned about what a Wainwright was when Steve Birkinshaw actually asked myself and Ben if he could stop in at our house on the way through. So I saw him do the challenge, and I knew Steve was also an adventure racer. So I watched him do it, and I was, that's when I was like, right, I'm going to do this. And at that time, I knew Steve was a way faster runner than myself. And I just watched the way he did it, though, and I was like, wow, he's really taking quite a lot of sleep, I thought. It was always something that we considered in our adventure racing teams, the sleep strategy, and how much sleep did you really need? Because when you're sleeping, you're not advancing yourself, and the clock is ticking. So it's always an interesting thing. We would talk about it a lot, when to sleep and how much. And then it's a team. You've got to think about the whole team. And I was always happy with the strategies that we chose. We often had a little bit more sleep than I would handle, but that meant I was always quite comfortable with the lack of sleep. So I didn't know at that point, when I decided to give the Wainwrights a go, how little sleep I could really survive on. But I knew it would be probably around what we did on the adventure racing when we did 5-6 days, because we would have no more than 2 hours a night. And Steve, I think, had at least 4, maybe 6. So I thought, you know, I'd have at least 14 hours in the bag easily. It was probably my analysis. So I just thought, well, can I run? How much slower than Steve am I going to go? You know, is there a chance that I can beat his time? I think that was always a possibility, but not a given. So you know, Steve did this in 2014, and I thought to myself, well, 2020 was a big year. You know, everyone was having things to do in 2020, so Wainwrights was going to be my 2020 thing. So Paul wasn't in the equation at all. In fact, I only just knew he was going to give it a go sometime in 2019, probably around January. I think he wanted me to help him on some legs, and also to stop in our house like Steve had done. So then he did it, and he brought the time down a bit. So I thought, well, yeah, you know, who knows whether I can beat that time. So that wasn't really a huge consideration. I'd only ever just wanted to complete this amazing journey. But in preparing for it, I decided to, as well as it being good training, being out in the hills all the time, I wanted to recce the exact legs, because I wanted to design the route myself. Steve had spent a long time exploring the maps and really putting this whole picture together that we see. I mean, we can't forget that Steve really was the one that did that, because Joss Naylor had done it before, but there's no, there you go, that's it. There's no, nothing on paper for us to see exactly how Joss did it. It's just word of mouth and the people that helped him. But I loved that Steve did that, and he left us with a bit of a legacy there, you know, for us to see the route he did, and yeah, make our own improvements or follow him exactly how he did it. And Paul did exactly the route that Steve did, because his strategy was like, he knew he can run faster than Steve, so all he had to do is exactly what Steve did, a little bit faster, you know, and he pulled it off. Genius. The first time, you know, made it look like a breeze because you only had to try one time. So, you know, it didn't bother me that the record had been brought down some more. I wasn't really trying to compete with these guys as such. I was just challenging myself. But when I started to do these recce's, I thought I'll time how long it takes me to get, you know, on each leg, and there are 25 legs. So I put it in my little spreadsheet. Each time I went out and did a recce, I just put in how long it took me to do each of the bits. And because I was doing these recce's carrying quite a big pack, because I had to support myself, and sometimes I'd had to run to the start of the leg, do the leg, and then run back, I would always be a little bit tired. So I thought probably the time that I'm doing them is about equivocal to what I will do it in the actual thing, even though I'm going for longer. And I kept coming out. It didn't matter how many times I put this in the spreadsheet, I kept coming out with 6 days. 6 days was how long it was going to take. And so I was like, well, that's it then. I've got to try and do it in under 6 days. That's a good marker for me. So, and I remember sending this round to people who were helping me, and one of them was Paul. And I think when I sent him this, he was just a bit like bemused, really, that I would challenge him this, because we all knew he was faster than me. But I think it was a bit ballsy. I didn't ever consider it so. I just calculated and I knew, but it was considered by a lot of people to be a bit ballsy, I think. So yeah, but that's how I came up with the 6 days.
I mean, running the Wainwrights at all in a oneer is a ballsy thing to do, and it's an interesting thing to hear you say that, like, it was Steve's round that sort of put it in your head, because in many ways, someone who, you know, followed Steve's round and the aftermath of Steve's round, looking at that and thinking, oh yeah, I'll do that, seems like an odd response, because he really struggled with health for a number of years. Alan Heaton famously went to hospital in the middle of his round back in the 80s. But you made 4 attempts in just over 12 months, plus a Pennine Way record, plus the Coast to Coast record. Were you ever concerned that would be you, that you'd have brain fog for 3 years after one of these attempts?
No, I live for the now. I don't worry about the future. Life's too short.
Okay, fair enough.
That's
That's all right
my
then.
short answer. It was the honest answer.
I mean, did you ever have any like prolonged recovery from any of these attempts, or was it just, a few weeks and you were fine again?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what you call prolonged. I mean, for me, being out for 3 weeks is annoying enough. So I think the longest recovery I've ever had is actually after the winter spine.
Okay.
That took me so long to recover from, and that was I was getting very worried about the Wainwrights, because it wasn't until late March that I could actually properly run, and I wanted to do it in May. And I was only starting, running, anything like 6 or 7 kilometers in March, because after the spine, for 3 weeks I was on crutches. Because I twisted my ankle badly, and and I wasn't very fit going into that race either, because I think I'd got COVID actually. I mean, it probably wasn't a known thing back then, but I'd been in bed for 2
Was the trip
weeks.
to Nepal? Was the trip to Nepal?
Yeah, trip to Nepal, yeah. And I was in bed for 2 weeks, literally in bed, which I don't do. Really quite poorly, coughing a lot and very high fever. So my spine 2020 prep was really poor, and I just planned to just get myself to the start line and just do it in whatever way I could. But I think the consequence was not that I couldn't do it. The consequence was that I was very took a very long time to recover afterwards, because I hadn't been as fit as I should have been. So yes.
So it was your condition going in that was the difference. It wasn't anything necessarily about the spine race.
The condition going in, and the fact that I'd injured myself during it.
Yeah, that'll knock you back a bit. Yeah.
Yeah. So those things. So that's what happens when you do any of these challenges. I think if it all goes smoothly, you recover well. If you don't eat properly, I find your recovery is prolonged. If you have an injury during it, of course, your recovery is prolonged. So the interesting one is, though, that third attempt, my legs were completely fresh. I felt they were fresh straight after, because I was so limited from my ability to move because of my lungs. So because of the asthma, I spent all my time trying to recover my breathing. And during it, I hadn't run to anything like my full capacity, because my lungs were restraining how fast my legs could move, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that was easy to recover from.
You made 4 attempts in total, for something that big, in a very concerted period. Did your relationship with the round, did your feelings towards it change? Like, did you go from being all fresh-faced and enthusiastic at the beginning because it was something nice and new, to being a bit jaded and a bit over it by the last one, or same all the way through?
I can only describe my relationship with the Wainwrights as an obsession. I was absolutely, utterly obsessed, possessed with it. I couldn't think about anything else until I'd finished it. I can't tell you why. It was just so frustrating that I hadn't succeeded the first time, the second time, the third time. And it felt so disappointing and frustrating. That's the best way to say it. So I was always motivated, enthused and excited about it. I always enjoyed being out on the hills. Every time I went, set off to go and do it, I was probably excited. I mean, you couldn't restrain me. And I always just wanted to keep going. Every time I went out to do a recce, even in between, I didn't really do so many recces between the third and fourth attempt. I think I knew where I was going by then. But all the other recces, I would go out and I'd be really upset that I'd have to turn around and come back. And it was always life getting in the way. I'd always want to go further. I'd always want to go and do more, but I had to turn around and come back because I had to go to work, or, I had to see friends or family, I had to come back. So So yeah, I always enjoyed being able to complete the journey.
You, this is jumping back a little bit, but when you were training for the first two attempts, I suppose, that was 2020, lockdowns of various flavors were in effect. And you're a vet and it's your own practice. You're a business owner essentially. So you were in the same boat as a lot of people where you were doing loads more work for less business. That was probably a fairly stressful, worrying time. I'm guessing that for you, preparing for the Wainwrights was not an additional stress. It was the sort of release from all of that stuff.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely brilliant. So I took on a locum vet during COVID. It was like the only time that you could ever find a vet wanting work. It was brilliant. It's like everyone else was furloughing everybody. And I was like, no, do you know what? Actually, if I have someone here for 2 days a week, that's 2 days a week I can go and train, can go and run and recce. So it was a real release. So I went off and I probably had more time during COVID actually, because of that, once I took this person on. And I was living in Langdale. And it was brilliant because there was no one there. The weather was beautiful. We had absolutely stunning weather. So it was almost like magic. I could have these long days and I would just go out and do 16 hours of, from my door back to my door. I wouldn't take the car anywhere. But did mean my recce's sometimes got a bit boring because I would always go out the same way. I remember one time, I did 3 hours just to get to the start of a recce, and then I only bagged something like U-barrow and sea talon and had to come back again. And for my 8-hour day out, I only bagged two extra Wainwrights. I mean, I bagged some on the way, but they weren't ones that I needed to bag. So
Wainwrights line up U-barrow isn't the Bob Graham line, is it?
No.
That would be a kick in the teeth going on.
No, that would be great because that would be a nice line up U-barrow. Well,
You're the first person I've ever heard say that.
Oh yeah, no. Well, the line up U-barrow isn't so bad, to be fair. It's the line from U-barrow to sea talon, which is probably my least favourite bit of the Wainwrights. Yeah, either that or slight side, the bit to slight. So on the other, so that whole section is bad because it's bracken infested. A bit few hidden rocks under the bracken for you to trip you up, and it's very, very steep. So and it's really steep down, and then it's really steep back up again, up a bank of bracken. So yeah, that's probably the hardest bit.
You feel about that the same way that Paul feels about Binsey.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the Tor? I'm really keen to talk about the Tor. I love the Tor.
I love it.
For anyone who doesn't know, Tor de Géant is a 330-ish kilometer, 30,000-ish meters of climbing race in the Aosta Valley in the Italian Alps. It is Sabrina's favorite format, continuous 3, 2, 1, go, sleep as much or as little as you like, all that sort of stuff. How did that end up on your radar as something you wanted to do?
Oh, good question. When did I find out about the Tour? Because I felt like, God, why didn't I know about this race before? Because it was everything that I would love. I had entered it in 2020. I had a place in September 2020, and that was obviously binned off because of COVID. So I knew about it then. I imagine someone I knew went and raced it. So possibly from John Nat, possibly then again from Paul Tierney. I knew he'd done it. So then I entered it. But I was, I never actually look at what's involved in a race. I just go, well, how long is it, and where is it? Is it roughly exciting? Is it an exciting place to go? And is it long? Those are my two things. I don't even think about how long it is. The longer the better, because people sometimes ask me, well, how long is that? I'm like, oh yeah, I don't know. In fact, I didn't know how long the Tour was when I entered it, to be fair. I mean, the giveaway's in the name, Tour 330, but I didn't think about it. I just went, oh yeah, it's lots of hills and it will be long. So yeah, so that's how I found out. And yeah, had to wait an extra 2 years to get there because of COVID.
I mean, looking at your results from this year, you had, by your standards, a very restrained year. You did a 100-miler in Norway in April that you won. You were second at the 10 Peaks in the Lakes in June to, is it Emma Stewart, who's another vet?
She's another
So
vet.
that's you and Emma and Jasmine.
Yeah.
There's something to it. And doesn't Beth Pascal work in pediatrics?
Yeah.
All the long distance fell running women missed the memo about not working with children and animals. I'm inferring from that race schedule that the tour was a pretty big priority for you. You were pretty focused on it.
Yeah, that was my A race, I guess. I guess if I'm going to travel all the way to Italy, then I want to make it worth it, you know. I wouldn't want to risk, you know, an injury in the lead to it and, you know, and not make it, or yeah. So I wanted it to be a good effort. I thought it was one that would suit me. It's a long way, so you want to get there fit. But I did do the Lakeland 50 as well before I went. Yeah, and I would have done some other stuff if it'd come along. Sometimes you just sometimes I nothing just throws itself at me, but I'm more than happy to enter more races. I do get carried away though as well.
So what does your training look like for, you know, a race like Tour, which is in your case just a bit over 3 days of hiking up and down big passes in the Alps?
Yeah, so I never really do like a structured training program of any sort. I have an endurance base. I'm never worried about whether I can complete the race. This is generally just a given in my head. It doesn't concern me. I did want to do it fast, you know. For me, I wanted to do it, try and push myself a bit, and that was one of the reasons I did the Lakeland 50. Was you know, that's a short race, so you know, it's a bit of a sprint. So I did that one, and I had a goal for that, to beat my previous time, which I'd done, I think, 6 years before. So I was 6 years younger, but I'd only been doing, you know, running for about a year when I did the Lakeland 50 the first time. So my goal was to do it faster, and the weather conditions were worse, but I did beat my time, I think by about 10 minutes or something, which I thought was all right. So I thought I felt good. So in July when I did that, I thought, yeah, I'm well set here for the Tour to have a good race. What else did I do? I knew the one thing that might get me on the Tour was the altitude. I'd done the UTMB before, so I did the UTMB in 2017, and I noticed that every time I popped my little head over 3,000 meters, I felt really quite rubbish. But it was manageable because we didn't stay there very long on the UTMB, and the UTMB is a relatively shorter race. So, but I thought with sustained altitude that I could get pretty ropey, and I know other people have suffered with that on the Tour. So the main focus for this race was to go out to that area and get myself at that altitude and see what I was going to be like, so I would know maybe what I would need to do to make myself feel better. So I went out 4 weeks before the race, and I spent a week there, and I recce'd some of the route, and I did notice that I didn't feel like eating when I was recceing, which is really unusual for me because I am an absolute pig. I eat all the time, and yeah, and I would go out on these recce's for 8 hours, and all I would eat was one piece of Toblerone, and that was it. And I could get away with that on a day recce, but I knew if I did that during the race that was going to be game over. So I had an inkling that my appetite was going to be suppressed by the altitude. So I spent a week at altitude hoping that I would acclimatize in some way, and I did start to feel better by the end of that week. And then we came back, and then I went with Ben in the camper van. We went there to stay there for a couple of weeks before the race as well, because this was my main thing, to be out there and enjoy the Italian Alps, and it's amazing, and the weather is awesome, and it's like that's why I have to go back next year and do it all again, because it is such an amazing place. Beautiful, people are lovely.
Ahead of me here. You're getting ahead of me.
Yeah, food is amazing. So yeah, it's definitely a place to go and enjoy. So we spent an extra 2 weeks there before the race as well, again just trying to get used to the altitude. So I did put a lot into that. That was my main concern, that the altitude would affect me, and it did. During the race, even though everything I'd done to prepare for it, after about 8 hours I didn't want to eat at all, but I knew I had to. And so, as painful as it was, I sat myself down in support points, ones that I would have just whizzed through, eating as I went, but I sat myself down and I made myself eat whatever they had there. They had hot bowls of pasta or soup or whatever, and I would, even though it took me ages and I was just doing 1 spoon at a time, I told myself, you cannot leave until you've eaten at least half a bowl of whatever they're giving you. And it felt like ages. It felt like I was wasting time, but I knew if I didn't eat, then I was going to run out of fuel, and that was going to be game over, and bonk, to have a massive bonk, which would take far too long to recover from. So
I mean, we're kind of skirting around the big story here, which is that you won.
Oh yeah.
And you broke the course record by 5 hours. And that was a course record that was held by Silvia Trigueros, who is not a punter. She's a very accomplished ultra runner. She's won Tour multiple times. She's won a lot of very hard ultras. Like, that's, I don't mean to put down any of your other race results, but that's the best thing you've done, right?
Yeah,
in racing so. At least.
Yeah, it probably is. Yeah.
So did you just have a perfect race?
No, as you can see, it wasn't a perfect race. I even vomited, which is always a bad sign because I don't do that. But I did feel better after that happened, so it was good. But yeah, so I would say for about 36 hours, I didn't eat too well, but I did make myself. So, that worked. And the thing is that after that 36 hours, once I'd vomited and once I started eating properly, and Ben brought me, because you're allowed support there, he brought me a beef burger and some chips, and I ate those. And then at the next support point, he brought me a chicken burger and I ate that. Then the fuel hit my legs, and that last 24 hours of the race, I was on absolute fire. So that's really what got me the race, was that last 24 hours, because before that I was hanging on, force feeding myself.
Well, point. So you spent the first half of the race, Sylvia was out front, she was leading, then you sort of crossed paths a couple of times, swapped the lead for a little while. You were very clear that early on in the race you were doing your own thing. You weren't racing, you weren't thinking about where anyone else was. At what point do you start racing?
I don't know. I did catch up with Sylvia in the night of, I guess it must have been my penultimate night. And I was just pleased to see her, to be honest. I was intrigued by her and I wanted to have a chat to her. We were just having a nice little, conflab really about things. Going along together, it was, it was a good pace. She was pushing up hills. I felt, having to exert myself to keep up with her up the hills, but it was clear I was getting away on the downhill. But we went along together, and then we got to a support point and she wanted to sleep. That was what she wanted to do. And I had just had an Italian espresso and was wired. So I was like, I don't need to sleep. So I trotted off at that point. And it wasn't a conscious decision to get away from her. There'd been other opportunities where she'd been asleep and I'd arrived, and I'd just do my own thing, what suited me at the time. So so at that point I was ahead of her. But she wasn't the only person I was racing. There were lots of guys there that I wanted to race. I still thought I was trying to catch Damien Hall, but I didn't realize I'd already passed him. So I kept trying to find him. So was I racing? By that point you probably just want to get to the end. I caught up with a few other runners. I had good chats with them. I think these things are just too long to try and do anything that's not just concentrating on maintaining yourself and your pace. You know, if I find myself slacking off and I'm, you know, I am dropping pace and it's slower than you know, I can go faster still comfortably, then I'll give myself a little kick up the butt. But generally, I'm not trying to race anybody else, because it's too long to, it's not a sprint, it's not something you can just sprint. So yeah, you just have to find your pace and go with what's comfortable, I think.
I think one of the best things about those sorts of races is the opportunity to experience what you experienced, which is being stronger at the end than you have been for most of the race. That's a phenomenal feeling. It's bewildering often. You can't really put your finger on why it's happened, but like 2 days ago I could hardly walk downhill, and now I feel like I'm running at 5k pace. I'm not, but I feel like I am.
Yeah. You're right, actually. That happened to me in that summer spine. When I was crossing the Cheviers, and I don't know what got into me. I was just like, but I can go so fast, but you're not going that fast. You just think you are. It's a bit like being drunk.
Have you ever made the mistake of going and checking your Strava from
Oh,
times
no,
when
that's
you
a
felt
bad
like,
idea.
oh, it's really bad? I did that. I did a race in Andorra with Lawrence Eccles, who finished one place behind you.
Oh, yeah.
And we finished that race in 78 hours or something. And a kilometre from the finish, we came around a corner and there was another team filling their bottles out of this stream. Oh shit, we're racing now. And that's not a feeling that is very good. But I felt like we ran along the road to the finish at like 6-minute miles.
Oh, yeah.
Like 8-minute kilometres. Probably looked like we had broken legs. It wasn't fun.
Yeah, I remember Jimmy Highland, he had the cameras for the spine, and he's filming me descending the last descent into Kirkyeatholme on the grass. And I remember running, I'm going so fast. I'm thinking, how can he keep up with me with his camera? And he's just like carrying this quite heavy camera running along next to me, filming me. And I'm thinking, how's he keeping up with me? I'm running so fast. And it's like, I clearly wasn't.
I love that. You mentioned somewhere that you'd been doing quite a lot of strength training for the tour. Was that a new thing, or is that something you've always done?
That is a new thing, yes. So Maggie, who's got a company called Play in the Wild, she's absolutely brilliant. She's extremely knowledgeable, and she entertains me as well, because every session is something new and exciting to try. But why did I start strength training? I don't know. Everyone says you should do other stuff. And I do like weights. I used to do a lot of body pump. I love body pump, but no one seems to do it around here anymore, or they haven't in the Lake District. It's something I used to do. You know, you get it in cities and things, don't you? But so I thought I'd just do a bit of strength and conditioning, mainly because I enjoy it, not because I think it would be really helpful for my running. I just really like it. So I do it twice a week now. And it's also something I can fit in quite easily around work. Maggie's really flexible with me, so we normally meet at 7 in the morning, which, if you know me at all, I don't do early mornings. I really don't like. And but the one thing I will get up for is the strength and conditioning session, because I just like doing it. But I do think it has made a hell of a difference to my running. Whether it be preventing injury or just feeling stronger, and it just works on all your asymmetries. You know, everyone's a bit sort of lopsided in one way or another. My right leg is much bigger than my left, and you can just try to rebalance yourself consciously. You can see, is my right arm doing what my left arm is doing? Is my right doing what, you know, which one's being a bit special? You know, when we did an agility ladder, so we did a bit of that. I can do it on one foot leading and then I change it round, and the other one's a bit special. You know, you're like, oh, okay. And I think that's quite important, because obviously that translates to running down a technical downhill. You know, you've got to pick both your feet up really quickly and move and be balanced on both. So I think you get more bang for your buck. You know, doing 45-minute session of strength and conditioning gives me a lot more than just plodding around, you know, because I can't go out and do an exciting 45-minute fell run. I mean, you know, and in winter you're kind of doing it in mud and rain and horrid stuff. So yeah, I just really enjoy them, and I think they're helpful.
There's a whole mix of stuff like free weights and the agility stuff, and
yeah, pulling a sleigh, thing.
Oh, one of those things.
Yeah,
those look great. Those look like a lot of fun.
Yeah, all sorts of stuff. Doing pull-ups with, you know, various things, or yeah, she's quite inventive with the equipment, I've got to be honest. Sometimes it takes me about 10 minutes to figure out what I'm supposed to be doing, but once you get it, it's quite good, and you realize that it's working your muscle in just the right way to achieve whatever it was you were trying to achieve. And I like that she does the thinking for me, so I can just turn my head off, and
nice.
You know, she's got this great plan of
nice.
what's going to work for me, and it's great.
One last question from me before we get some of these from the chat. If you were to compare, like your Wainwrights record on the one hand, which is something which is your backyard, like you didn't literally start from your house, but almost.
Yeah, I did.
You did. Well, there you go. Literally your backyard. You know, it's supported by your family, close friends. Ultimately, you get the FRA Long Distance Award for it. It's, you know, something which is a big deal within the sort of local sporting community where you live. And you compare that with the Tour, which is a big international race. People from all over the world go and do it. Like, are you proud of them in different ways? Do you have a favorite? Do you get more excited about one style of racing versus, you know, the big rounds and that sort of stuff?
Oh, I love both of those so much. They're probably two of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. The Wainwrights was really special because all 4 attempts, and I look at it as a whole thing together. It isn't just the successful thing that sticks in my mind. You know, I enjoyed the whole sort of 2 years, really it was, of the recce's, then all the attempts together. So that 2-year period of doing the Wainwrights, I got so much out of it. It was exciting. It satisfied my adventurous self. You know, I really strive to do, you know, new things on the fell, new lines, new trods. But it brought together the community actually at a time when we weren't really seeing as much of everybody as we wanted to. So there were various rules, but I always managed to meet up with people within the rules, you know, and do the running and get all my friends together. So it was really special, and meet people I didn't know, and come together and do something really exciting. And there was such an energy about it on each of the attempts, of all the people, and feeling a part of something big. So it really was probably one of the only times in running that it was such a team thing. And a big team. I mean, there were about 50 of us all together on the 3rd and 4th attempts. And then the Tour, I guess the Tour was more a personal challenge. It's fun because, you know, it's in a beautiful place. The weather was amazing. The mountains were so inspiring. And the community there was incredible. They have the volunteers who are the volunteers who help on the Tour. They were all fantastic, you know, and all the mountain huts you'd arrive, and you know, there's all this food and these people just wanting to cheer you along and help you and support you. The crowds were there, you know, lining the streets when you come in, and even after you finish the race, everyone, you know, I won, so everyone wanted to give me the prima donna a prize or something, you know, free shot here, or come and join us in this party over here. I got a box of apple juice, you know, everything. It was quite incredible. So both of those are amazing things to have done.
We one of the definite flavors of questions in the chat is, are you interested in insert race here? You've already said you want to run the Tour again.
Am I interested in?
You said already that you'd like to run the tour again.
Sorry, I didn't
right?
hear the question. I'll run the tour again. Yeah.
Yeah. What else is on your radar? Because for someone like you, if you're into 3 to 4 hour mountain races, fill your boots. There's hundreds of them around the world, and they're all incredible. 3 to 4 day mountain races are harder to come by, right? And my assessment would be that you've done the sort of premier event of that kind already, right? In Tour. Okay. So what else is on your list?
Well, I keep thinking that more races will come. I mean, I know we've got a team here in the UK working on a grand tour of the Lake District. So, I think that will grow to be a big, exciting race as well. So it will be in September. So, what else is there? There are some further afield. I mean, I've been looking at places like Costa Rica and others to see what they've got. I think there's some in South Africa as well. There's some all over the world, which I'll give a go. I haven't got any exact ones right now that I plan to do. But you're right, there's only so many out there of the things that I've enjoyed. But yeah, let's hope there's some new stuff on the scene. I'm going to go to France. There's the Volvic volcanic experience. Okay. That's intrigued me, just volcanoes, but it's only 110k, that one, so it's not multi-day, bit short.
You hardly warm up.
Exactly.
Is someone here harking back to you saying that you were a stronger cyclist than runner? What about John Kelly's Grand Round?
Oh, you've got it. That will probably be something I give a go at. Yeah, definitely.
Oh wow. I mean,
but I keep getting back on my bike, and I'm like, this is just not as fun as running. But yeah, it's coming. I've been on the gravel bike, sort of trying to be inspired by the trails, because road biking is not as fun now. So I used to do a lot of time trialing.
How aware are you of the ultra mountain bike world? Things like the Highland Trail, Tour Divide. I could see you loving that.
Yeah. There's a few things that have interested me. I mean, I have done some long distance biking stuff. I did something called Joburg to Sea, which is Johannesburg to Durban. Ben and I did that together. It was 10 days. I think that's 1,000 kilometers or something. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff around on bikes, Transalps and things that I have wanted to do for a while but never got around to it. There were always too many adventure races in the way to get to these things when I was biking fit.
In terms of like UK records, you've done the Wainwrights, you had the Pennine Way record and the Coast to Coast record. Someone's asking if you're interested in the Southern Upland Way, because that's 200 and something miles. That's your kind of range. The Southwest Coast Path. There you go.
Well, I'll be exploring the Southwest Coast Path, I think, in Arcad Patrician. So then I can decide about that one when I'm there.
That's good.
Southern Upland Way, don't know too much about it. Sure. Yeah, if there's a bunch of people who want to support me on that, hell yeah, I'll just rock up and do that. I mean, I
doubt you'll ever struggle to get the support together. It's a coast to coast of sorts, I think.
Okay,
across the Southern
Uplands. The Southern Upland Way. Okay, right, winner. Let's give that one a go. Do you know? Does anyone know there is actually a long distance path called the Sabrina Way? Did anybody know that? Now, it's in the Cotswolds somewhere. One day, when I was working down there, went for a run there, and I found this little footpath sign thing, and on it said Sabrina Way, and I was just like, wow, this is really cool. I'm going to have to do this. So that's another one I've got to do. It's got my name on it,
Literally, yeah. I mean, I don't think you have a choice. Do you know anything more about it, or just that it exists?
Just that it exists, but Lisa seems to say it starts at the S something.
Yes,
beginning of the River Severn, yeah. That's where my name comes from, I think. Something to do with the River Severn. But that's not how my parents named me. It was I was one of Charlie's Angels, apparently. They watched too much TV.
Too much TV. Yasmin wants to know if you have any tips for downhill running. It's a forte of yours. Is that just
Now,
something you've got, or do you work on that?
Depends what kind of downhill running. So I'm actually really bad at technical downhill running. So the kind of fell race, technical rocks and really steep, not my forte. But the long grassy stuff, that's my thing. Or yeah, non-technical downhill is more my thing. So I do want to get better at the more technical stuff, and my advice would be to do things like these little agility ladders and getting your feet fast. So the thing is, the optimal running technique is very different when you run downhill on technical stuff versus when you run downhill on non-technical stuff. So when you run on non-technical stuff, I use a really long stride and I'm really powering off my hamstrings, and that's what makes me so fast, because I'm only touching the ground probably half as much as everybody else who's using a really short stride. So that's the trick for these non-technical descents. Don't tell everybody. So the technical stuff, the fell runners, you'll see they have a really awesome short little stride. They are picking their feet up really, really often. So you want to be fast, really fast. You want to have good balance. So you probably want to practice, hopping from one leg to another with your head turned and looking different ways, pushing yourself off balance, and get really strong on, standing on one leg at a time and pushing off one leg at a time and placing your foot in all these awkward positions, because that's essentially what you've got to do going down these difficult things. And I know I'm explaining all about it because I've researched a lot, because I want to get better at that as well, because that's where I lose a lot of places. The minute the ground gets too technical, the world is overtaking me.
You talk about how you're not a fast runner and you don't do that well in fell races. Are you ever interested in seeing how much you can improve that? Like set aside 3 months to train for fell races and see what happens? Or does that just take too much time away from the stuff that you're really interested in?
So in my typical style, I did think about it. I thought, oh yeah, I should really try these shorter fell races, and just do them and see whether I can get any better at them. And I thought, oh, I could challenge myself. I could just do every single fell race in 1 year. I was like, I have to have some kind of focus and challenge why I'm going to do it. So it won't. Yeah. So I'll need a year when I'm not doing some longer distance stuff, because the thing about these shorter races is when you turn up to them, you need to be fresh. You do need that taper. That taper is really important. And the problem is I like being able to run when I feel like running, and it would really annoy me if I had to taper and the weather was good, and actually I just wanted to run. So with these longer ones, I can still, I can go running. It doesn't matter if I've run 50k in the week before, something like the Tour. It makes no difference. But for something short, yeah, you got to bin off everything else, really.
Is it possible to do all the fell races? Because would you have to speak nicely to race directors to get them to adjust start times so you could get from one to the other?
Yeah, when I say all, I don't know, you'd have to pick, like, I don't know, the ones in the Lake District or the ones, that fit into some kind of calendar. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like one a week or something. Definitely do all the classics, that kind of thing. Something like that.
Caroline wants to know if you have any distraction techniques for really long distance stuff, or do you just sit with the misery and enjoy it?
Oh, I hate it when people say misery. I don't get it. Why would you do something if it was miserable? I have to say, I'm generally pretty happy while I'm doing these long distance races. Yeah, there might be one particular thing that's annoying me at the time. Like, sure, when I couldn't eat the food, that was really driving me mental. And that was, I guess, that could be miserable if I chose to, if I'd chosen to focus on that particular thing. But I was, well, maybe that's a distraction technique. Okay, so that miserable thing, I distracted myself by looking at the, we had full moon for 2 of the nights, bright full moon, completely unobscured there were no clouds. It was absolutely stunning. The scenery was amazing. And I think that's the motivation for me. Races I enter, they've got to be interesting things to look at, and change of scenery and exciting. It's got to be inspiring what I'm looking at. So maybe that's my distraction technique, is that I'm enjoying the the air, the trees or the mountains or whatever I'm seeing. I'm enjoying that.
What time of day did you get to Refugio Coda?
Oh, I got there
after Donas. There's a
I got there at
really long climb.
sunset.
Oh wow!
It was stunning. That was the best part of the race, because I got there and literally the sun just set, but there was this massive moon. It looked like there was someone with a massive light, because it was so bright, and you kept thinking, why is it so light? It's night, and it was the moon. It was just it was stunning.
So for anyone who doesn't know, Refugio Coda is more or less the halfway point of the race, but it's also, you've started at the foot of Mont Blanc, highest mountain in Western Europe, and you've come all the way down. And if you look south from Refugio Coda, you see like the plains of northern Italy. You've run out of Alps. And it just feels like there's really, I mean, it's lovely to look at, but it's also this kind of significant moment where you sort of turn your back on that and head back into the mountains to head back to the foot of Mont Blanc. It's, special, really special.
Yeah.
Sharon wants to know if you're going to run the Cheviot Goat in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, I'm actually on the entry list. I should go. I should definitely go. I'm hoping that it freezes and that all bog shall be hard and we can walk on it like Jesus walked on water. That's what it needs to be, I think.
Fill your race vest full of loaves and fish.
Yeah, I think. And the thing is, I think I am not injured and not as fit as I'd like to be, but I think I can go and race it. Since Tour, I had a sore hip, which I rested. That's why I started cycling a lot. Actually, I did 3 weeks of cycling a lot, and then I've been building back slowly. So I think I'm ready now. So I could go and do the goat race. I think I'm fit enough. So yeah, probably.
Have you done it before? Have you done it before?
Nope.
No, first time. It is one that could go a couple of ways, right? Like if it's frozen, it's a very different experience to if it's not, right?
Yeah, well, because I haven't done it before, but all I've heard is people moan about the bogs, and I'm like, yeah, but
Hey, multiple times. Surely you're a specialist.
at the bogs,
Hmm.
at falling in them.
Once you've been over Blenkinsop 5 times.
Oh, have I?
Have
I
you?
been over Blenkinsop? Have I? Maybe.
Pennine Way does go there, right? I've never done the
Yeah.
Pennine Way.
How many times
Okay,
have I done
good.
the Pennine Way? Yeah, 3 or 4 times. Yeah, no, maybe I have. Yeah, there are a lot of bogs there. You're right. I should be an expert at this, but it doesn't mean I enjoy them.
That's fair. So that's when you need your distraction techniques.
That's when I need someone to pull me out of them. I'm too small. I'll sink.
Yeah. Just pack a snorkel. You'll be fine. You'll be absolutely fine. Sharon is getting to the important stuff. By the way, Anna, if you want to jump back in anytime, we could probably go on all night. So feel free to come in and wrap this up. Sharon wants to know, what's your cake of choice?
Oh, my cake of choice. Oh, well, the minute she said that, a Black Forest Gatto sprung to mind, actually. But I just like variety. So, new exciting cakes are also good. Coconutty ones, raspberry ones, blueberry. I'm pretty flexible on my cake eating.
Yeah, I've jumped back in the very important part of the discussion here. I guess one thing we have to do before we finish is to decide we're going to send a copy of your book to, Where There's a Hill. So, Ally, I think you've got the list of people who sent the questions. Did you have a favourite question in there?
Oh. Yeah, I think Yasmin's.
Yeah, okay. Tips for running downhill.
Downhill running.
Oh, yeah.
I think that was
Unique.
It wasn't about races or confectionery, so it kind of stood out.
Yasmin, if you can message me, if you can see to DM me and send me your details, and we'll arrange that for you. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Sabrina. It was so interesting, and especially for people who may be thinking of taking on some of these challenges. Really learned a lot from listening to your approach and the way you go about these races. And thanks, Ally. That was fantastic. We should mention we've got 2 more talks in the diary, one in January and one in February. So all the details are on the ShAFF website. We're going to be uploading this talk to the ShAFF YouTube. So if you missed any of it, you can go back and rewatch, or you can send it to your friends. And I think that's it, really. So thank you so much, everybody, for coming. And hopefully we'll see you all soon. If you feel moved to donate, please do. The details are in the link, and Matt will send an email out this week. Yeah, with links to how to donate and links to rewatch. All right, thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye.